Good morning. And thank you, Mike, for that wonderful introduction. So as Mike said, a few months ago, I got to give you guys a 2-minute testimony of what God has been doing in my life. And today, I am so privileged to be able to give you the full story. Julia, if you mind putting up the family photo. So I'm going to give you this photo. It's a silly Christmas photo, but it puts the faces to the names of some of the people I'm going to be talking about. So my husband, Steve, you may have seen him up here drumming before. Layla's beside him. She's our oldest. She's 12 years old. Lily's on the far left. She's almost 10. Timothy's right behind my head. He is 6. And Tanner's beside him, and he's 3. And to be completely honest, I struggle with sharing this story a little bit because it doesn't just involve me, but also my family. And I also don't want to, I'm not asking for sympathy or empathy, and I don't want to compare our struggles to anyone else's struggles. Everything that we go through is very real and valid, and so I don't ever want to compare that. You can take that down now. So I'm going to condense about 6 or 7 years into 15 minutes, so I hope you can follow along. The start of this journey truly began for us when Steve and I felt called to move from Alberta to BC with our 2 beautiful little girls. We just obediently followed God in this, and we gave everything that was a challenge or a worry or struggle to God, and we saw him open doors. As we moved to BC, we had a roof over our heads, we had work, and all of our needs were met. After living in BC for just about a year, we were blessed to welcome our lovely little boy, Timothy, and he is now 6, as I mentioned. A year and a half or so after, look at that. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. I can't believe they were so little. They just grow up so quickly. It is crazy. That little girl is 12. But anyway. A few months, about a year and a half after he was born, we found out we were pregnant with our 4th. And how wonderful was that? That was just such a blessing and a really prayerful journey for us. We didn't know what to do, and we just gave it up to God. And right after finding out we were pregnant, I had also found out Timothy was being flagged for a potential autism diagnosis. And that was really scary for me because I didn't know what autism was, and I didn't know what that would mean for our family, and I didn't know how to parent a neurodivergent child. But through everything, we can do it, right? through God, we can do anything, is what I'm trying to say. And then a few months later, still in that pregnancy, we found out our unborn child would have Down syndrome, a life-threatening heart condition that would need surgery, as well as a kidney condition. This is a little bit, I didn't think I would cry. So I found myself asking God, why? Why me? Why us? Don't we have enough? Isn't there enough on our plate that we're trying to deal with? We made a lot of sacrifices moving to BC, and we no longer had support. Why? But of course, my prayers didn't end there, and I prayed for strength, and I prayed for wisdom. I prayed healing over our unborn child, and I prayed for our family in general. And then we were so wonderfully blessed to welcome a beautiful little boy, Tanner, in July of 2020. And at his birth, we found out his kidney condition had rectified itself. And I thank God for that. That is not my work. That is no one's work but God. The first 3 days in the NICU with Tanner were almost surreal. They were perfect. They were just lovely. And we were so excited to welcome our little baby boy home. And I will never forget the day. We were sitting in the tiny little playground at BC Children's Hospital. If you've ever been there, there's this thing they call a playground, but it's really not. And the 3 kids were there, the 3 older kids, and Steve's parents who were visiting. And because it was COVID, they weren't allowed in the hospital. Only Steve and I could go in. And we were just sitting there chatting about how amazing Tanner was doing and how excited we were to be bringing him home soon. And then I got a call from the nurse upstairs in the NICU with Tanner, asking us to come upstairs immediately because Tanner was being rushed from his room in the NICU to a more intensive care NICU. I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought like NICU is intensive care, but there's tiers, and he was being rushed to the most intensive care NICU room that there was. And so, of course, we said a quick goodbye and rushed upstairs. And for weeks, we were trying to find answers to really medically complex questions. We had saw so many specialists, and all of them were trying to find the answer and solve the problem. And I would pray every single day for God to heal him. And while the world was shut down and isolated, I felt isolated even further, spending 24 days in the most intensive care NICU possible, wondering at times if I would ever bring my fragile little baby home, wondering if he would ever meet his siblings. And in order to get through that pain and trauma and suffering, I needed to give it all to God. I would fall asleep on the cot in Tanner's room, praying for God's will to be done, and desperately praying that his will was to heal my baby boy. I prayed constantly until his test results came back normal. The doctors were stumped. There was no explanation as to why it was fine. There's still nothing. In his chart, he was not good one day and fine the next. And all of that to say is God answers prayers. It may not be the moment we want or the way we want, but God answers prayers. If we are persistent and we are paying attention, we will see prayers being answered. And I just remember being so thankful for God and my relationship with him in that moment. I was just completely in awe of this miracle that God had done for us. Since Tanner's birth, his medical complexities continue, and they vary in ways. But I just know that we have this firm foundation in God's wisdom and his strength, and at times his patience. God has taught me many lessons throughout this, but the three most important ones is that I need to surrender my control. I need to give up my control and give it to God. That I need to trust in him. That I need to never stop praying, continually pray. And that God is faithful. He's really faithful. Just as it says in Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not onto your own understanding, and in all ways submit to him, and he will make your path right. And I know I don't love taking verses out of context, but truly that verse was very meaningful in my growth with God. But the biblical passage that I want to read with you today, Julia has that so we can put it up, is Ephesians. And it's actually Paul's prayer to the Ephesians. So it's Ephesians chapter 3, verses 14 to 20. And it says, "For the reason I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name, I pray that out of the glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know that this love surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, just as Mike said, according to his power that is that is at work within us. To him be glory in the church and in Jesus Christ through all generations, forever and ever. Amen. It's really a beautiful passage that just reminds me of my faithfulness and obedience and how important that was for me to get through these really hard and dark times. And church, I know we started January with a life laid down, and we're back into foundations of faith. And every week when I hear the sermon, it just affirms my feelings and my what I've been learning and listening to God say. And it's just such a beautiful thing when we think about, what we've been through and what we're going through, and how, Pastor Mike or Reg or Minister Josh, what they're saying kind of aligns with what we've just felt through. It's just so affirming and wonderful. So back to the message. I just want that to be sort of a message of encouragement for you all today, that we may all know God and have Jesus dwell in our hearts. I don't know what you're going through, what you've been through, or what you're about to go through, but I know that through God, all things are possible. Thank you so much for letting me share.